Yo, what's going on YouTube? This is Bro Man Clash, and some of you are probably saying like, "Yo, bro, man, look at this! It's daylight. Usually you come out at the nighttime. What happened?" And I'm just like, well, to put it to you straight, you know, semester's over. Summer vacation begins. Next month I'm gonna have a summer job and all that stuff. But honestly, today I'm gonna talk about a topic, and it's still gonna be on the parallel of, it's gonna be on the paradigm of black black issues, but more importantly, it's going to talk about the black struggle, but it's a part of the black struggle that people think is associated with racism. And let me put it down like this: when you deal with racism, you got to deal with people who have power. See, you can be a bigot, anybody can be a bigot, but being a racist, that means you got to have power. And some of you may say, like, what's this? Is going to be a topic about racism? No, it's going to be a topic. This topic going. It's going to be about you know it's going to be on black nationalism and black oriented movements in general. See, now people think, oh yeah, black people unite together, and black people come together and try to go against white people, and that's racist in itself. Let me clear something up for you. We are not going to go around there attacking random white people. And I remember Malcolm X said this, and I said it before, and I'm just going to say it again. And if some of you get offended, remember, I'm just quoting him, and he told it how it is, but take it to a context like this. And this is what he said: the government is to be held accountable for its injustices. Well, I'm just paraphrasing. The government is supposed to be held accountable for their injustices. Don't blame a cracker in Georgia for your injustices. The government is responsible for your injustices. The government can bring these injustices to a halt. Now, that little snippet of what he said right there, minus the paraphrasing part, that's also talking about how to weigh racism, white supremacy, and it ties into black nationalism and black oriented movements, because we're not attacking like small town white people. We're not attacking white people that are just like, oh yeah, simple farmers, those that look like the stereotypical rednecks, they have, the overalls and all that crap. No, we're attacking the ones that are in the suits. They can make the laws. They are establishing laws. And apparently, just because you are white, and I remember I mentioned this in my revolution topic, and how the way both black and white poor people, and I read this somewhere before, that both black and poor people did unite together and went against a common enemy, which were wealthy people. But some of them were pretty shrewd, so they said, you know what, man, let's separate them, because we're noticing that their numbers are pretty high. So let's separate white and black by saying that, oh yeah, white people are this and black people are that. White people are superior. They have overall intelligence and they have more privileges, while black people, they are less intelligent and they have lesser privileges. And if you associate yourself with black people, then you essentially you essentially revoke your own privileges. Now, some of you may say, how does this tie in with black nationalism, Clash? Well, let's put it like this: if unified nationalism didn't work back then, and people fell for the same old trick that they did upon the natives, and and there were also Somalians too, Native Americans united with enslaved Africans, or as I put, not enslaved but in bondage Africans. They were not in bondage, but you catch my drift. They were in chains, but yet they fought back for a common cause. But after a while, we had to fight for our own battles. That's where black nationalism or black oriented movements come into play, because ever since then, people didn't even want to bother with us, so we had to deal with for ourselves. One notable example being the Pan Africanist movement with Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and especially when he taught black people, not even black people, Africans, Ethiopian, and here's another thing about Africa too. Like I mentioned that it's also named after a Roman, a Greek or a Roman general named by Scorpius Africanus. The original name of Africa was either Ethiopia or Akubalan. That's what I've heard before, and listening to lectures and all that stuff. But apparent, but here's the thing: he didn't care if you were African from the if you were an African from the mainland, African from Asia, African from Europe, African from from the United States, or African inside of anywhere there's Africa. He was your ally, but he wasn't stupid. He wanted. He knew that some of his people were not gonna, be down with the movement. So he said, "Those who are not down with the movement, I cannot help them. But those who are willing to participate in the movement, they are able to come through." Now, that's very important to talk about, with black nationalism and black-oriented movements. See, look, black nationalism and white nationalism for like some state or country are totally different things, because if you press in black nationalism, black, black oriented movements, you know, overall just having like a pan Africanist feel, that means you're focusing on your people regardless of where they came from, whether they came from the Caribbean, whether they came from the islands, they came from the motherland, they came from the states, they came from Europe, they came from Asia, they came from all over the world. They don't, that shouldn't matter, because you're down with your people, and that's black people. But the Pan Africanist movement, it got tied down to a halt, but it didn't stop. It's just that it briefly halted for a bit. Then flash forward to a few years later, where there were the Black Panther, there was the Nation of Islam, or they were called the Black Muslims, and then there were the Black Panther Party self defense. But yeah, that came a little bit after the Nation of Islam, and it gets real funny because everybody wants to talk about you know what about the Nation of Islam? Isn't that considered to be like a black nationalist movement? And I'm like, yes, it is, because not only the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught black women and black men how to be disciplined. See, if you teach a woman how to be disciplined, poised, and to be intelligent, and not to be ashamed of herself, then you have yourself a woman that will last with you for a lifetime. Now, you can teach, but you cannot force. See, look, now, that's the thing about black nationalism. It teaches. It does not force. It teaches. It teaches people how to be themselves again after they were lost from the very same oppressors that oppress them to think the way they think. Now, to talk about, the Nation of Islam, and some of you may say, like, the Nation of Islam, isn't that the same group that killed Malcolm X? Now, let me tell you something. The Nation of Islam let Malcolm X go. They did not kill him. The CIA, FBI killed him. There were CIA agents that were posing as the Nation of Islam, as you will know, and I listened to some lectures, and they were talking about how the way there were CIA, FBI informants, and knockoff members of black revolutionary groups that would enter inside and try to pose as the best of the best, or try to pose as those who are overzealous, who have too much emotion, but at the same time are taking notes, but trying to hype up the emotion of the leader. Yet when the leader is about to complete their legacy, or is about to start their legacy in terms of like starting the movement, they either get shot down or they get sold off by the very same people that look just like them. Now, black nationalism means that you are loyal to your people first. That means race first. You're loyal to your people first. You're loyal to the people who look just like you. You can have friends from outside. That's cool. But when it comes right down to movement, when it comes right down to your own people, they come first, because you were born from them, not the other way around. Now, when it comes right down to it, black nationalism in terms of Nation of Islam, it was more religious than it was, social. But when you deal with social way of thinking, you gotta look at the Black Panther Party, which I wholly admire because they taught both men and women how to be armed and disciplined. Sure, they taught them about. Sure, there was a communist way of thinking, socialist way of thinking. Especially one notable example being Kwame Ture. He was a part of. He was the one that actually coined up. We want Black Power. Stokely, his original, well, his supposed American name. What I mean by supposed, I mean, that was the name that was thrust upon us by our own, by the slave masters, and then after generation after generation after generation, people forgot their original name. Thus, they didn't know who they were or are. So that's why I say presumed or supposed, you know, was Stokely Carmichael, but he changed his name either to his original name or back to who he was, which was Kwame Ture. And he said, "We want Black Power." Now, that's that thing right there, Black Power. They were not talking about overtaking white people. They were not talking about harming white people. Let's get that one thing straight. When it comes to black nationalism and white supremacy, see, white supremacy or white supremacists seek to embarrass, seek to humiliate, and seek to destroy or seek to conquer other people, while black nationalists seek to defend, seek to make sure that their people are safe, make sure the women are trained in discipline, and make sure the men are trained in discipline, make sure the children are trained in discipline, because if you have an undisciplined people, you have a destructive culture. And that's not apparent. See, with the Black Panther Party is different because they were not a destructive people. They may have thought differently, they may have, done things differently, but they still love their people regardless. And that's what makes them black nationalists. Now, after that, they were supposed to be the Crips and the Bloods. And I mentioned before that the Crips and the Bloods, especially when I talked about with my take on the Baltimore riots or the Baltimore riot, and I talked about how the way the Crips and the Bloods' original intent for the black community was they were meant to protect the black community, not destroy it. But economic conditions, along with the CIA, FBI pushing in drugs into the community. And I remember Furious Styles. If you remember from Boys in the Hood, they always glorify the gunshots and all the gangster crap. But Furious Styles, and I remember my friend showed me this on Facebook, and it was funny because it came from the same movie that was glorifying, the black man as a savage. One of the few movies. But then here was the funny thing. He mentioned about gentrification and how the way, on every corner of the black community, there's a gun store and a liquor store. Because you want to know why? Because they want us to kill ourselves. And if you kill people's ability to reproduce, you don't have to worry about, a next generation of fighters. And he said we gotta keep our business, we gotta keep our neighborhoods black owned with black money. Now, if that doesn't sound like nationalism to you, like black nationalism, and exposing a problem that happened in the black community, then I don't know what me and you were talking about. Honestly, you could be talking about, oh, that's racism. That's what you're trying to say. Let me tell you something. When an Asian man does it, let him practice his nationalism. Let him help his own people. Let him help his own way of life. If a white man does it and he does it to death, let him do it. I don't see people complaining about it. If a brown man does it, let him do it. I mean, brown man and us, we are the same people. Matter of fact, if either a brown man or a black man does it, it becomes a problem because of two reasons. One, because of media portrayal. See that bullshit right there? The TV. They don't want it. They don't want you to look at a black man starting their own business. They want you to follow a stereotype that you can see and follow on the goddamn screen. And reason number two, because I mentioned about the Pan Africanist movement and the nation, the Nation of Islam and the Black Panthers. You know what they did? They were focusing on their community first, and they did not want to think about, oh yeah, if these people have like an economic power, they could overtake us. And you want to know what the funny part was? That happened. It was it was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and there were a few others. And but the one notable example was Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, showed that black people, if they can exist away from white people and still prosper. But somebody told a lie one day, and how ironic that it was white people. And you want to know what the funny part is? They always say, "I tell a little white lie." And how many white lies destroyed many? How many white lies destroyed many lives? And that was notable. That was one notable example of how some jealousy, pettiness, and lying can destroy a neighborhood, because a white woman claimed that two black men came up and raped her. Remember back then there were no forensics, there were no DNA testing. They would just go by word of mouth, and they just say, "Oh, so they go through that neighborhood right there," or they would just say, "You know what, man? Fuck it, we'll just burn up and blow up this whole damn neighborhood right then and there." And they did just that. And ironically enough, they're acting like that whole incident never happened, but now it's being resurfaced. And it's very funny how, you know, there was the Philadelphia bombing, especially with the Move movement, and that also dealt with in black nationalism as well, because it was dealing with the advancement of, black people. But and some of you may say, but what about the NAACP? Well, the NAACP was was funded by Jewish people or white people. Some of them were Jew. I understand that there are black people who funded who are Jewish and practices Jewish beliefs, but you catch my drift. And it wasn't not only it was Jewish people. Well, there. Well, you catch my drift. There were also white people right there too that were funding the NAACP. So it was funded by the very same people that they were meant to go against, that were oppressing them. So it was a contradiction. Now, that's the reason why I didn't mention much about the NAACP, even though it's a beautiful organization, but at the same time, it's a contradiction in itself. Just like I remember I heard this from Dr. Umar Abdullah Johnson, and he said, and he was quoting the words of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and he said, "White money in a black movement is like cancer. It will never progress. Because if you rely on the very same people that are oppressing you to fund you, then they can take that money away, and you will struggle on your own." And I mentioned before at how way Furious Styles in Boys in the Hood mentioned that, hey, we gotta keep our neighborhoods black owned with black money and black businesses, which I totally agree. And Booker T. Washington and W.E. Du Bois or Du Bois. And it's very funny because, Booker T. Washington, he taught people how to build a school from the ground up. And I think I remember, yeah, it was the Tuskegee Institute. And how the way he built it from the ground up. And that was not the first historically black college, but I think it was one of the earliest in America. And after that, to me, that felt like nationalism, because he taught people how to build it up on their own, as opposed to going to a college for for people for their own, and go in a competition against a people that don't even care about them, and against the government that doesn't even want them. And then I mentioned about the Crips and the Bloods. The Crips and the Bloods, and I mentioned this before, and the Crips' original intent were to protect, black people from the scourge of predatory gangs. And then the Bloods were created by, I think, upper middle class, people black people to protect themselves from the Crips. So ironically, they were going against each other, and now, just like the whole slave effect, what happened? Generation after generation after generation, even though it wasn't a long time, guess what happened? They fought each other, and they don't even know the reason why they are fighting each other. They don't even know that they were meant to unite with each other and fight against a common enemy. And I say what happened in Baltimore was beautiful, because the Crips and the Bloods uniting for a common cause, that's lovely. Because they realize, like, wait a minute, we're facing against an enemy that's killing us. And we are fed up with killing our own people. And we are fed up with the deaths of our own people. And now that we're seeing that not only we're killing each other, but we got also other people who are killing each other for centuries are killing each other now. Now, to me, that's also black nationalism to a degree. And I mentioned a whole lot of examples of black nationalism, and I mentioned about, see, look, Malcolm X and Dr. King. Dr. King, at first, he was a little bit of an integrationalist, but then he started to talk about, workers' rights, but then he started to talk about how black is beautiful. That's also a string of black nationalism right then and there, too. Malcolm X was always talking about black nationalism, and he was talking about how the way black people should, do for themselves, should stay disciplined, should remember who they are, forget their oppressor, be who they can be. Now, some of you may say, isn't that racism? I'm just like, wait a minute. Now, let me get this straight. What I described right there in some form of sense of detail to the best of my ability, that did not sound like racism. That sounded like a people united against a common enemy that oppressed them. Now, with white supremacy, on the other hand, like I did in another video, it was following ethnocentrism, basically believing that their culture is superior over another culture, and they were following imperialism, which they believed that they should conquer other people and other ways of life so they can prove that not only their way of life is superior, but also to reap the rewards. So white supremacy is a damaging cause, while black nationalism is meant to uplift. And with that, YouTube, I say this is Grown Man Class, signing out one. Hope you have a great day today. And I gave you my take on black nationalism and black oriented movements. At one. Catch y'all later.